Welcome to That's So Clutch, an automotive podcast that bridges the gap between car industry experts and those who are not. Welcome everyone to episode 2 of That's So Clutch. I'm Aline, your host, and today I'm joined with Andrew Burrow from Austin INFINITI. How are you doing, Andrew?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
So Andrew, you're the general manager of Austin INFINITI, but before that you were in sales in 2001 at Mercedes-Benz of Austin.
Correct.
From there you went to be a finance manager and sales manager between 2005-2007, general sales manager in 2011, which later, 2020,
Sure.
Here you are, general manager of Austin INFINITI.
Oh, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So with that experience alone, I'm sure you've seen the industry change a lot throughout the years.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, the industry has evolved. There's ups and downs. It's truly been crazy, but I don't think that we've seen anything like what we're seeing today.
For sure. And I'm very excited to hear your take on what the future of the car business is going to be like.
Oh, my goodness.
So let's reel it back to 2020. COVID starts.
Sure.
Coincidentally, you also become general manager of a store.
Great time to take over anything in the automobile. Yeah.
New brand, new store, everything. And COVID's going crazy. People are in quarantine. They think they're going to be gone for 2 weeks. Turns out it's not. It's a lot longer.
No.
People are scared.
Sure.
And a lot of businesses were affected by this. What do you think have been the long-term effects of the pandemic in the car industry?
Well, I mean, I think you have to go back even a little further than that to like 2016, right? When you look at, units in operation, new cars would sell roughly, 17 million vehicles per year. All the way until about 2019, we dipped below 17 million. But then whenever, the pandemic hit, right?
Yeah.
Those numbers dropped drastically. And so I think that what we're going to see in the next 3 years is really going to be impacted by what happened during the pandemic. The lack of new car availability, used cars doing what it did, all of these vehicles that weren't being sold that were normally being sold is going to affect things about 3 years down the line. Okay. So I think, as far as the overall impact, I don't think we've really felt it yet. I think we're really going to feel it over the next 3 years.
I feel like consumers really started to feel it when the chip shortage happened.
Yeah, so all of it has kind of a ripple effect, right? So we had a ton of new car inventory whenever all these things hit. Days supply was probably 90 to 120 days. And for those who don't know what day supply is like if you did not receive any more new cars, how long would it take you to sell out of all the inventory you currently had, right? So day supply went through the roof, and then all of a sudden we didn't have inventory. And so that was either being restricted by, obviously the manufacturer's inability to get you the vehicles, or like you mentioned, chip shortages or other components that weren't allowing them to build the cars like they normally would. And so all of that has had a ripple effect to where we are today, and it's been very impactful, and we're seeing a lot of crazy things go on right now in the automobile world that we've never seen before. Okay.
Has the chip shortage slowed down a bit, do you think?
Well, I think that, yes, it has. I mean, if you look at our inventory with INFINITI specifically, it's kind of climbed back up to pre-pandemic levels.
Okay.
So I think they've really done a good job of ramping back up. Well, some manufacturers, right? This isn't across the board. This is, with INFINITI specific. But some manufacturers haven't been able to catch up yet. There's plenty of them out there that are still dealing with getting vehicles in. Our Subaru store is still struggling to get vehicles in.
So personally, in 2021, I was trading in my Subaru and getting a new one, and I was one of the lucky few that got it. And even then, I had to wait a week.
Sure.
And right now, I'm in the process of getting one, and it was supposed to be here last week, and it's still not here. So it's like, why are we not up to date with these kinds of things?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different factors that are affecting the auto industry, and it's not just a matter of like supply chain issues or things like that. Some manufacturers are literally still holding back inventory to keep levels down, right? Okay. Because if you look at, pre-pandemic, the manufacturers were having to heavily incentivize vehicles to sell them because there were so many sitting on the lot. And then when the pandemic hit, supply went down, demand still was up there, right?
Yeah.
But then they weren't having to incentivize anything, and then still selling a lot of cars or selling the cars that they had. So it's interesting to see the dynamics that are affecting the ability to get cars today, the timing of it, whether you're ordering vehicles, whether you're still going to be picking vehicles up off the lot. And I think that's really where the next big changes are going to happen, and what that sort of buying dynamic looks like in the next few years.
So if the chip shortage has slowed down a bit, why are interest rates so high right now?
Well, I don't think those two things are necessarily connected, right? Inflation, all the other economic factors that are going into that sort of side of the business doesn't really have anything to do with sort of the ability to have a car. So they're making things more difficult to get cars, right? I mean, the average car payments just jumped up over the past 2-3 years. It's I think currently sitting at like $730 on a new car, and it doesn't have anything to do with people doing short-term loans or anything like that. The loans are still normal; they're still out there 5, 6, 7 years. The vehicles are just more expensive. Not just more expensive in like MSRP, but like more expensive just to purchase in general. When you've got 7, 8, 9, 10% interest rate on a vehicle that you used to be able to get 0% interest on, your payment jumps up significantly. And so that's just where we're at today. And all of those different factors, vehicles are more expensive, interest rates gone through the roof, all of those things are playing into that.
How does repossession rates play into this?
Oh my goodness.
Because I read something not too long ago about it just going higher than ever right now.
Well, and I think that goes into the fact that vehicles are more expensive now. Interest rates are higher now. People's payments are higher now. So they've got themselves into a position where they're spending way more money on a vehicle than they had in the past. And so you take pandemic stimulus money that no longer exists. You take pandemic pricing on new and used cars that was hyperinflated, so people have massive payments. They had money to pay for it back then. That stimulus money has now gone away now, and so the repossession rates are going to probably be high for the next few years, I would imagine.
Really?
Yeah, I think probably 2025 we'll see maybe a drop off in that, but just cyclically speaking, you're kind of on a 3-year cycle for purchases, and so that's probably what will be the kind of the breaking point.
What has your dealership done to expedite wait times for people who are expecting vehicles to come in and haven't come in?
Well, I mean, I think for us, specifically INFINITI, they've done a good job of bringing our inventory levels back to, I say pre-pandemic levels, but to where we have a decent supply where if someone wants to come in, they can purchase something. Other manufacturers don't have that luxury. I think, depending on the demand for the vehicle, I mean, like Subaru, for example, because they're in our family of vehicles here at CAG, they are still on kind of an order basis system right now. Like you gave your own experience, right?
Yeah.
You pick out your vehicle, it may come in 2, 3, 4 months from now, so you have a general idea, and that's happening on a lot of different brands that are hard to get. I think Mercedes-Benz is probably another one that comes to mind.
Really?
And I think those manufacturers that do a better job of ordering in an order system are going to really do well over the next few years.
So I want to touch on online shopping.
Sure.
Because I am a huge online shopper. I love online
Everyone
shopping.
is. Yeah.
It's just so convenient. But I find it very hard to go shopping for a vehicle without being bombarded by email scams or not scams, sorry, email spams.
Or scams.
Or scams.
Sure.
or being redirected to like 1,000 other things just for one car. And I just want to know what the price is, or like just want to customize it.
Yeah.
Why haven't dealers been able to keep up with that?
I think that the direct consumer model is what a lot of the manufacturers are trying to go to, which is difficult. After we've we've done business in such a manner for so many years. It's really difficult to shift that, right? Tesla is one that comes to mind, and some of the other EV manufacturers that have done a good job of like rewriting what that looks like, right? You can go online, 9 clicks later, you've got a vehicle that you can order. You know what your payment's going to be. You know all the factors that it takes to purchase a vehicle. So
And it'll be
they've made
delivered
it
at your doorstep.
Yeah, they've made it easy, right? I think if we don't wake up as manufacturers, INFINITI, Mercedes, and these other brands on how to make it easier for consumers like yourself to purchase something, we're really going to be hurting ourselves in the future.
Yeah. So how has your dealership adapted to the world of online car buying?
Well, so we do have a online ability to purchase, right? It still is going to require, human interaction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for some, I guess, but it is still going to require human interaction. There's still inventory here on the ground where people can see, feel, touch, drive, all of those things that I think you do miss when you do kind of just that direct consumer model. You can't drive your Tesla before you purchase it. You do all the things online, which is great. But what if you get it and don't like it? Where are you going to take it? So there's a lot of questions behind that need to be answered, I think, before you can really fully jump in with both feet to that. Over the next 5 to 10 years, if there's not a pretty drastic shift in the way that we operate and the way that people purchase, I think you're really going to see the auto industry hurt, to be honest with you.
So do you think the car industry is going to balance out, or do you think there's a new norm on car buying?
There's so many things that are happening today. It's just like there's new bits of information every single day about what's going on. Lenders are really pulling back on what they're lending. You've got big time banks like Capital One, for instance, right?
Oh, yeah.
They just pull back all of their floor planning business and basically giving dealers who they floor planned about 90 days to find someone else to floor plan.
So why do they do that?
Well, I don't think it's a huge part of their business model in general. But, the environment is just, I think it's on shaky ground and people are uncertain. And so they're trying to figure out the best way of doing business. And I don't think Capital One's going to be the only one. I think there's going to be some other things that will fall in line with that.
How will that affect your customers?
Floor planning has nothing to do directly with customers. It's how we pay for our new car inventory. But if that expense continues to rise, then typically expense gets transferred down to someone else, unfortunately. It could potentially make things more expensive. Kind of pandemic time frame, moving through that whole 2-3 year period, dealers are actually making money on floor plans. So because interest rates have risen, and it's just going to change that dynamic. Who are you floor planning with? Can you floor plan with them? Are they even, it could force dealerships to relook at how they do their business. That's the reality of it. I mean, it's not a cheap business to be involved in. And if the place that you're getting your money from stops giving you money and no one else is going to give you money, what do you do?
Have you seen a lot more used car sales in the last few years, or is it more new?
Well, looking back at pandemic time frame, all of that, I mean, there so many things shot up, right? The pricing of new cars shot up because supply and demand, right? Supply went way down, demand went up. Same thing with used cars. I mean, used car pricing went through the roof. Dealers were having to pay more to get used cars. And so all of those levels kind of jumped up during that period of time, but they've taken a drastic shift since then.
So with floor planning, does that also apply to used cars, or is it just new inventory?
Most of the time, dealers don't floor plan used cars. They can. You certainly can, but most of the time they don't. We typically, you pay cash for them in the transaction, and you don't floor plan them. So I don't think that's directly going to affect them. I think the main thing that's affecting used cars at this point in time is just how much they cost.
Yeah.
The price of them hasn't really dropped that much. The availability of them doesn't really exist. I mean, that sort of sweet price point that I think a lot of people are looking for in pre-owned cars doesn't really exist right now, which is about, $20,000 range to $25,000 range. Those cars have kind of gone away. So the availability of inventory has really affected how many used cars are being sold. And I pulled up some stats off of CarMax, right? Because they're one of the largest pre-owned dealers out there. And it's interesting to look at. So their Q4 net income was $69 million, pretty good, down 57% from the year period previously. 57%, significant drop, right?
This is this year's stats?
So this was the end of this past
okay.
year. So this was coming off of the pandemic year. Everyone's incomes were inflated because used car values were inflated, all the things that were inflated. So this is coming off of that. Revenue was down 26%. Again, this is the largest used car retailer out there, right? Total used vehicles sold down 13%. So down 169,000 cars.
Wow.
Big numbers, right?
Yeah.
But they do a lot of business. There's a lot of used car operations that are suffering because of the availability of used cars. The pricing was such, and then just the general value had dropped so significantly. I mean, our store specifically dealt with the value drop. It was almost like from one day to the next, the value dropped significantly. And I'm not talking just $5,000. I'm talking $10,000 as far as what you could sell your vehicle for. And so if you bought way up here, right, in the clouds because you had to get inventory, and then the values dropped on the retail side of things, you just had to, kind of take that one.
Yeah.
And it was really impactful for a lot of used car operations. And, I think CarMax is a prime example of what that looks like, because that's what their business is, used cars.
So why are cars so expensive right now?
Because they can be, I guess. No. No, it's just there's fewer used cars available. We used to sell about 17 million new cars a year, and then that dropped significantly by over 3 million units during the pandemic timeframe. So there's less vehicles available, for one. The vehicles themselves, through inflation and other means, have just gone up in price.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to, buy a Toyota Corolla for like under $40,000 without all the stuff. So vehicles themselves have just gotten more expensive. We have more people that have $1,000 plus car payments than ever before. We're spending more on vehicles than we ever have in the history, which is crazy to me. I don't think vehicles are going to get any cheaper anytime soon. Manufacturing of all these components that go into building vehicles aren't getting any cheaper. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. So maybe
That's scary.
maybe how we own them is going to have to change.
How so?
Well, you look at, so my niece is 16, right? So I don't know about you. I mean, I know I'm a lot older than you, but whenever I turned,
not that older.
I don't know. We'll see. But whenever I turned 16, I had to have a car. Like that was there was no option. I did all my driving tests, all my stuff. I was out on the road quickly. My niece, she's 16, hasn't taken her driver's test, doesn't really care to, because she has so many other alternative forms of transportation or other ways of just getting around.
That's true.
Period, right? So, all the rideshare services are available. They can get around and do what they want to do. So her getting her license isn't necessarily the most important thing to her at this point.
Well,
So
and I'm sure she probably sees it as just another expense that she doesn't want.
sure, and I think a lot of people are looking at that. So when you talk about an expense, $1,000 a month is a lot of expense.
Yeah.
And if the average one is $730+ a month, and then more and more people are having 1,000, and there's not a whole lot of extra money available. So I see maybe the way we buy vehicles is the potential shift, because I don't see the vehicles themselves getting much cheaper.
So my last question for you is, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would you tell yourself?
If I could tell my younger self, my 3-year younger self, anything, would be just to buy as many cars as I possibly could back then at the price back then, whether it's new or used, and then just kind of hold on to them. But we didn't know. None of us knew. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all, we're all just trying to figure it out on a daily basis, and there's so much coming at us from availability of inventory, not having some, having some. What are you selling them for? And then ultimately, how do we keep taking care of our customers in this new world?
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you so much for joining today. I'm very excited to see the feedback we're going to get with this, and
Sure.
this was so interesting to hear about. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of That's So Clutch. As always, please leave a comment if you have any questions about the automotive industry, and maybe we'll feature it in our next video.